don't know how much time, for how long you are on quarantine now, but I've been since the beginning of March, and I don't know which day of the week it is today. The only reason I know that today is Tuesday, it was because of this interview. If it wasn't, I would thought that this would be Sunday or something like that.
Yeah. Strange. It's strange, but it's also strange, I think, how we've just adapted to it, and it's become sort of normal. And sometimes I have to stop myself and say, there's a global pandemic. It's actually happening.
Yeah.
This thing has been the stuff of dystopian films and what have you. It's actually happening, and we're living through it. Although, personally, without wishing to tempt fate, I mean, I live a very comfortable life, so we're just being at home, really. There's no great hardship on our part at all.
I saw that video you made with Steve Coogan for the Comic Relief event.
Yes.
And you said you watched Tiger King in 2 nights. Is that really good? Because I haven't watched it yet, but there are many people talking about that now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It took more than 2 nights, actually, because I've got 2 small boys here, 12 and 8. So you can't just stay up mega late, because you got to be up with them. But it's really good. It's very, very good. I mean, it's such a cast of eccentric, colourful characters. It's it's just remarkable. It really is. Yeah.
So, due to quarantine, do you think that the little man in the box has to be inside another box just for protection?
That's right. Yes, he does. He has to be. So normally he would sound like this. Normally he would sound. I haven't done this for a while. Hang on. Normally he'd go. But I think that now he'd be in a smaller box, and now he'd sound like this. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought him up so I could check up on him.
Do you have to do something to your vocal cords to maintain them because it's really hard to do that voice, right?
No, it's only hard sometimes if I'm on tour and my voice is taking a bit of a battering, or if I've got a sore throat, then I can't do it. So I suppose you need flexibility. All you do is you just squeeze the back of your throat there, and you just make a sound. You try and move the soft tissue at the back of your throat to make a sound. I find it very funny that people are so interested in it, because it really is. I mean, it's even more of a trick than just an impression. An impression is pretty shallow and lightweight, but that small voice thing is even more so, But
it's just a bizarre idea you had. I think that for me, I don't live in the UK. I live in Portugal, but I knew that voice because of the Trip series. And for me, it's quite just a little bizarre idea, but it kept in my mind for so long.
Yeah, it's strange. I found it when I was at home one day, and I was thinking about ventriloquists and about how when a ventriloquist does his or her thing, they call it throwing the voice, and it does sound sometimes as if the voice is from somewhere else. And they don't move their lips. So I started just trying that, and I was kind of going, and then all of a sudden the little voice came out. You can do other things too. You can do a thing. I've heard people do things where it makes it sound like they're in their chest, or if you try and speak with your mouth shut, you go. That's another thing people can do.
But talking about your impressions, one of the impressions you made that I love the most is the Roger Moore one. And for that matter, what is for you the best Bond film that Roger Moore has made?
Good question. Well, my the one that's, I don't know if it's best, but my favorite would be The Spy Who Loved Me. And that's partly because when it came out, which I think was 77, I would have been 12, which is a pretty good age for James to like a James Bond movie. And I can remember going to see it in a cinema in West Wales. And that's my favorite. As for the best, maybe you'd say Live and Let Die. That was his first one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I would be somewhere between Live and Let Die and The Spy Who Loved Me.
As a matter of fact, I saw The Spy Who Loved Me recently, and it's quite good. It's quite good, but this is quite controversial for me. But I love the Carly Simon song. I think it's the best Bond song. I mean, I love it. Many people say it's cheesy, but I love it.
Well, now you've gone on to a very interesting area here. This whole idea of things being cheesy. I mean, I Carly Simon, although of course she wrote it with, I think Carol Bayer Sager wrote it, but I think Carly had some input into it. But Carly Simon is a brilliant artist. It's very strange how some people. I heard that said about somebody else the other day. Oh, I'm a bit embarrassed they've been listening to such and such. And you want to say, well, why wouldn't you? You know, it's interesting who becomes cool and who's, I mean, and whether that song will be cheesy. I think Nobody Does It Better is a fantastic song. The structure of it and the way she sings it, I think it's wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
So you are a music critic now, also.
No, I'm not a music critic, but I do get a bee in my bonnet, as they say, when people start talking about guilty pleasures as well with music. You know, it annoys me. I always think, well, who are you to say that some sort of music? I always want to say, well, you go and make one then. You go and make a record. You go and write a song, and let's see where that ranks on the. There are lots of acts, who are considered to be a bit passé or whatever.
But it's quite. I think that the people that believe that there are guilty pleasures are people that, in one way, they are guilty of something else, but they just want to disguise that with the songs. They have killed somebody. I don't know.
I don't know if it's gone that far, but yeah. But I've just never. It's just not in my nature to. But then it's also not in my nature to. You get people who, when they don't like something in comedy, they'll say it's just shit. That's not funny, and that to me is such a ludicrous thing to say. It's like saying that bananas don't taste nice. Well, you don't like the taste of them. It's not they don't taste nice. I always find that with comedy. I mean, there are plenty of people I don't find funny, but I would never say, oh God, they're just rubbish. As long as they're making some people laugh, that they're clearly not, And comedy seems to really get people's, they get very passionate about it. If they don't like something, a lot of people gets, I think it's bad, that person. And you think, whoa, wow, why are you getting so up about this, Yeah.
And about your live shows, did you ever experience such a strange reaction from the audience? I mean, you were thinking that you were going to have a massive laughter from the public, and then it's just an awkward silence.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All comedians have had that. Yeah, you can have a joke or a line that you think is kind of wonderful, and they don't go for it. Of course, that doesn't stay in the show very long, because it's just a real, any set that you do is a sort of survival of the fittest, and the weak stuff just fades away. And equally, they will laugh, they'll give you a bigger laugh for something that you think is just so. To that degree, the audience kind of forms what you do, because you you end up giving them what they want, you know, because just to survive, you know, you'll realize, oh, they like, I found that over the years of live shows, the pinpoint things that they like you doing. And you think, okay, well, I'll do a bit more of that.
I think you mentioned this in an interview, but there's this kind of new idea that the some old comedy is not so well received today. So there are many people complaining, like the fact that people judge too much comedy, like you said. And I remember that the first time I saw you, I think it was many years ago. I don't want you to think that you're old. But it was in Little Britain. The first time I saw it was in Little Britain, where you portraying the husband of Bubbles' rival. Today, a thing like that couldn't be made, right?
Well, it's interesting because there was just a sort of a benefit show done on the BBC last week. Oh, that's the thing, you saw the sketch with me and Steve.
Yeah.
David and Matt did Little Britain in that. And that was very interesting because the response to the Little Britain sketch in the papers varied from, I read one piece where the writer was apoplectic about it, was absolutely furious that the BBC had done it, and basically thought it was offensive in every possible way. And then I read others that thought it was awfully good. I personally thought it was fantastic. I thought that they the creativity of what they did, and they really put effort into it, and it was stylish and it was tight. I really liked it. It is interesting that there'll be a fair number of people that will react, that basically have that opinion that one writer had. I forget which paper it was, but yeah, we are living in the age of offense, of being offended, and people feeling that it's very much their right to never be offended, and that if they are offended by something or hurt by something, then whoever it is that's offended them is very much in the wrong and has to be stopped. I'm not in that camp, you know.
I understand completely, and I agree with you. And talking about the trip again, because I noticed that you are going to end the series now with this latest season, and my only question is why it wasn't made in Portugal, which is such a nice country and it's right near Spain.
Yeah, I know. Well, all that's a Michael Winterbottom question. See, Michael makes all those decisions. I mean, it's very much his film, his show. Steve and I just turn up and perform. We've never had a say in the location. You know, he'll just, word will filter down. You know, we'll hear a rumor as to where it is. Or with this one, I remember hearing from the executive at Sky, John Montague. He said to me once, he said, "Oh, so I know Michael's been doing recce's in Greece." And I said, "Has he?" I didn't know. Because I had heard talk of it being Scandinavia, this last one, which would have been interesting. But it turned out to be Greece, and it was, you know, fantastic. And of course now, with everything that's happened, it's even more fantastic because it's like a forbidden fruit, you know, this idea of travel and interacting with people the way we did.
Yeah, it's like watching an antique now. Like in the old days, we could do this.
I know, but I mean, it's a funny situation, isn't it? Because when lockdown happened here, I was on tour. I was touring with a band, doing a show with music and what have you. And we had to cancel that. We actually cancelled it during the sound check at one of the gigs because the Prime Minister gave a press conference so it was before lockdown. It was the press conference where he said, "I'm recommending that people don't go to the theatre."
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, I can't now have all these people to come into my theatre on my, bidding. Maybe they're going to catch something, and maybe they're going to die, all because I wanted to carry on with the show. So we actually stopped the show there. And so now we're looking at when can we do these dates. So provisionally, we're thinking about early next year. And you think, yeah, well, that should be okay. But who knows? I mean, do you think thousands of people will be able to sit in theatres in January and February of next year? I don't think it's guaranteed.
Yeah, it's quite. We here have also obviously the same problem like in the rest of the world. Many things are being postponed, and but that question keeps in the minds of everybody. Would people go, and would people buy a ticket? And
Yes, yes. It's one thing to say, will it be legally allowed? That's one question.
Yeah.
And then, well, would you go? Now I do that. And you see it in some of the people that you see the police going up to them and saying, breaking up crowds. So there'll be some people, but whether it'll be in sufficient numbers. But who knows? I mean, so much has happened now in such a short space time that to the beginning of next year is a way off. So we can only hope,
Yes, the hope is our only answer now for these terrible times. And I read somewhere that during the quarantine you are spending some time watching your favorite movies with your kids. In those occasions, did you can't resist to impersonate some of the actors or not?
Well, I mean, my first reaction is to go, no, of course not. But in fact, we watched Bridge on the River Kwai, and as Alec Guinness was, so we were saying to the boys, you know who that is? That's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then they were saying, well, which Obi-Wan Kenobi? Because of course, Ewan McGregor played him as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
No, the one in this. So quite often when Alec Guinness was speaking, I would occasionally say, these are not the droids you're looking for. I could miss that, but speaking, no.
it's just for that answer to your kids' doubts. Okay, that's nice. Yeah. But I was talking about Portugal previously. Do you know the country? Did you ever spend some vacation here?
I think the only time I've been, I flew in to do a performance at a corporate event. There was something, I can't remember which company it was. So I didn't much of it. What I saw was, I mean, I know it's beautiful, but I just arrived at the airport, was driven to some big hotel on a golf course, had to do a set back. So no, I don't really know, I don't know it very well.
I hope that when all this is gone and you come here to spend a vacation, you and your family will enjoy it.
I've got friends. I have some friends who have villas in Portugal, and they absolutely love it.
Yeah, you have to come here. Talking about the trip again. The fact that you and Steve Coogan are portraying a fictional version of yourselves, did that confuse the audience in a certain way? Because it's like it's you, but it's not you at the same time. And people are so sensitive nowadays that they don't know to make the difference.
I think it does confuse people. I was surprised, but I think a lot of people think it's almost just like a reality show, as if they're just literally just following us around and seeing what happens, which is not the case. It's very constructed. Yeah. The arc of the story, Michael Winterbottom writes that. So to Greece begins, or it ends, of course, with Steve's dad, fictional father, died, and that's Michael's, creation. So people do get confused. It's quite funny because but of course it's what we've created, and we play on that. But even that sketch you mentioned, which I did in this office, just looking in a different direction, and I saw a few things online saying, "Oh, it's typical, Steve had put his awards behind him," but well, that's all very deliberate, of course, because I sometimes talk to Steve on Zoom in office, and he doesn't normally have the awards behind him. That was the idea, and I put some of the figures of things I've done the voices for in animations behind me. But you can tell that some people think that we really are just chatting. And I always think that for Steve, I always feel he has a bit of license to do that. He almost only appears in character. Whereas I host a show here called Would I Lie to You? And I've done a show called the Rob Brydon Show, and I go out on tour as me. So I'm also saying, hello, this is the real me, sort of thing. So sometimes I think if I behave badly or show some unpleasant qualities, I almost think it's easier for him because he's never seen anywhere as himself. So it's just another creation. So in the trip to Italy, where I had the one night stand with the girl in the boat, I saw quite a few things online for that saying, I've absolutely hated him since he did that, or I've never forgiven him for that. And you think, oh, it's not real. It's because if it were real, there would have been a camera in the bedroom with us, which seems a bit odd.
So your real character is like you're the real bastard and Steve Coogan the more nice guy.
I'd never describe him as a nice guy.
In the series, you are like the good guy, except for that one night stand. You are the good guy.
One moment of weakness. That's all. Just one.
We are all humans.
We're only human. That's exactly right.
And there's that moment of the trip to Spain where you do Marlon Brando as the leader of the Spanish Inquisition or something like that, which reminded me to ask you, what are your beliefs? Do you believe in God, or if you don't? A philosophical question, just to make things easy.
Sure, okay. Well, I'll give the coward's answer, which is I like to believe in God. I mean, I kind of don't see. I mean, well, then you've got my God, then you've got Allah, but we won't go there. It would be lovely if he existed, or she, if they existed, but I suppose the answer is no.
Yeah, no, okay. That's a fine and honest answer. You made some duets, many of them with persons that you impersonate, like Tom Jones. But what is your dream duet?
Oh. Well, Bruce Springsteen, probably, because I love Bruce. I absolutely love Bruce. So, yeah, I've sung with Tom Jones. I sang with Neil Diamond.
Yes.
All these people I love. He's a good example of what we were talking about earlier, Neil Diamond. Some people say my guilty pleasure listening to Neil Diamond. What? The guy's a phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal performer. I find that bizarre. Anyway, so Bruce, I would say. I did a film recently called Blinded by the Light, which is all about a guy growing up in Britain in the 80s and discovering Bruce. Yeah. And I sang Thunder Road, a bit of Thunder Road in that. And then Bruce saw it. And I've met him a couple of times then since. So for me, it's so strange to know that Bruce Springsteen has watched me on a big screen singing Thunder Road. I mean, that's one to get your head around. You just hope he was watching it thinking kindly, you know. He was very nice to me when I spoke to him, but he wouldn't he, you know. But I just hope that
he doesn't want to make you cry.
Does he want to make me cry? Yeah, it does a bit. It's sort of yeah. It was so so singing with him would be good. I'd also like to sing a duet with Barry Gibb. People would say cheap, would say, really?
Yeah,
Incredible, you know.
But can you make an impersonation of Barry Gibb?
Yeah, we did. I did a little bit of Barry Gibb in Spain. They didn't use much of it, and it may not have been. You've probably seen the film version.
Yeah, I saw the film. Yeah,
yeah. It may not be in the version, but it was in the series where he based. Hang on, I got to think about it for a moment. Barry's got quite a shot of shibble and sound now to his voice, and he's got that Atlantic kind of thing, and he always sounds as if he's trying to just calm everybody down. It's as if the two other brothers, you know, God rest their souls, would occasionally have an argument, and Barry would be the one to have to come in like that and talk. So that's how I do Barry Gibb now. A little bit breathy, a little bit earnest, and talking like that.
That's great, as usual. And another thing that I discovered while researching for this interview was that you had a role in the last Dennis Potter production.
Nobody in all the times I've been doing interviews, which is 20 years, nobody has ever brought that up. So
really,
never.
But do you feel shame for that or?
No, I think it's quite funny. You know what happens with everybody in their career is you basically get asked the same questions because why wouldn't you? It's the same life people are asking you about.
Yeah.
But no, I was in that Dennis Potter thing, and that was called. That was Cold Lazarus. Yes.
Yes.
And I had to. I have quite strong, clear memories of that because it was at a time when my career really wasn't going anywhere, and it was a miracle that I got cast in it because I couldn't get to see any casting directors. I just couldn't get anywhere. You know, it was like just locked doors everywhere. But somehow, and I forget who it was who cast this, and I forget how it came about. But I part a tiny part.
Yeah.
And it's a futuristic piece. And Diane Ladd or Diane Lane, forget who it is. She was an American actress, and it was in a set. I think it was at Clifton, which is not far from where I live, or it might have been Pinewood. And they built this swimming pool indoors. And the idea was that a plastic kind of orb hovers above the pool while she's in it, and my face is inside talking to her. And so to do it, they had to put me in front of a green screen, and they shaved all my hair off. And I don't know why, but they did. And then wrapped green around here, so just my face. And then I had to look. I couldn't see Diane, of course. I had to look at the lens hood. And my memory of it is that two things. One being that the director wanted me to do it all the time, make my reactions bigger, because I had to imagine that I could see her and look at her as she moved around. And I remember thinking, but this is too big. What I'm doing is too big. But I didn't have the confidence to say, I don't want to do it like this. And then, sure enough, when I watched the finished thing, I went, oh God, I'm doing it too big. And the other thing was that when we shot my bit, the people that were in the actual scene were there. And so Diane Ladd or Lane, she was there, and she was wearing kind of like, I don't know, diaphanous kind of like it was a bit like lingerie, all flowing and stuff. It was quite extreme.
Yeah.
And of course, she didn't know me from Adam. I was completely unknown. And I tried to make a joke. And I think I said to her, it must be nice to do a job where you can wear your own clothes, thinking that I was being witty. And my memory of it is that she just kind of went, Oh,
But do you think that the final product was good?
I honestly can't remember. It was years ago. I think I watched it. I mean, it was Dennis Potter, so you know, he gets my vote. But I honestly, I can't remember it.
I'm watching now for the first time the series of Pennies from Heaven, and in fact, he was quite a great writer.
Oh, he was one of the great writers, undoubtedly. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and the singing detective and all of that is just great. And another role of yours that I discovered recently in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yes.
It's a small role, but how it was that experience?
Well, I got that part. Now, again, this is again at the time. Well, that role turned out to be the role that changed my life, really, but not because of the role itself. I somehow got an audition for it. I can't remember how, because I can't remember who my agent was at that point, but I got an audition. So off I went and met Guy Ritchie, who was unknown, of course, in those days. And I have a memory of sitting the other side of a desk from him and reading the part. I mean, which is, it was tiny. I think I had to say, "You can't park here," and then go, "Oh." So I did that with him, and the thing I remember was I was talking to him just generally, you know. And the only film I'd ever done at that point was a Richard Gere, Sean Connery film called First Night that I played. It looks like I'm an extra when you see it, but it was actually a part. And it was called The First Villager. But the day before we filmed, I had a phone call. I was in the supermarket and I had a mobile phone then. So, because this would have been about 90. When was First Night? I don't know, 90. Oh, it was when my daughter was born. So it was, oh God, 94, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
20, something like that, yeah. And they said, my agent phone said, "Oh, listen, they've cut line." I had one line or maybe two lines. "Do you still want to do the part?" And I said, "Okay." So I'd been in that. So, but then what happened was, because my daughter was about to be born, right?
Yeah.
So I was filming First Night, and I had about 4 days on it, maybe, dressed as a villager, like a peasant villager, all shot outdoors. And then the film needed me and other people in our scenes for longer, okay, because it was going slowly.
Yeah.
But I couldn't hang around because my daughter was about to be born, you see, and I didn't want to miss it. So I said, "Well, no, I can't." And they went back and forth with the agents, because not in films, what I now realize happens is you sort of give yourself over to the film. And if the film runs late, you go late. And if the film, you know, and there's nothing you can do. But in those days, I earned my living as a radio presenter, and I was very much in charge of myself. So I wasn't aware of that. So I just said, "No, I can't be here." And one day, the producer of this film was a big Hollywood guy called Hunter Lowry. And he came up he said, where's our I was sat like a peasant villager with all the other guys, just, you know, looking at Richard Gere in the distance and going, "Wow." And he said, where's our expectant father?" And I said, "Oh, that's me." He said, "Let's take a walk." And he walked with me up this hill. He said, and he was, to be fair to him, he was very reasonable. He said, "Listen, I understand what it's like. So here's what we'll do. We can bring your wife out to the set. We'll have a nurse here, da 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 da." He said, "Or we have outside your apartment and we can visit." And I said, "No, sorry." And he wasn't happy. And so that's why in that film, that you see me at the beginning watching Richard Gere have a sword fight. You see me in the burning barn. And then later in the film, all the villagers have been hiding and they come out of a church going, "Oh, wow." And I'm not there. And then was that I refused to come back, which I now see was a very bad decision. And I can now see as well, he was being very, very reasonable. So anyway, when I had the meeting with Richie, I read the piece, and, you know, frankly, a Labrador dog would have played the part. It didn't require a lot of skill. So you don't have 6 heads. you're going to get the part. So I read it, and then we started chatting, and we're getting on very well. And then I started telling him that story I told you about being on first night and how I wouldn't do the thing. And of course, then I left there and I thought, hang on a minute, I was just telling him how, you know, I'm not a reliable person, you know, and I won't put the film first. I thought, oh. And then it went very quiet, and I thought, oh, and months went by, and I thought, well, I haven't got the part. Because in films and television theatre, they only tell you when you've got it. You never hear that you haven't got it, you know, until you see the poster or you know the film is coming out. So I thought, oh, well, I haven't got it. But in fact, it was just that the finance had fallen through, and then all of a sudden it was happening. So I did it, and it was perfectly pleasant, and it was a very testosterone-fueled set. I remember that. It was all very sort of legs and all that, you know, and sort of five. There was a lot of that going on, you know, which is not really my natural habitat. But it was fun, and we did it, and that was that. And then a few months later, I was in Soho, and I bumped into the actor Stephen Moyer, who you know from True Blood and things like that. And Stephen and I had been in another thing together, and he said to me, I don't think he's in Lock, Stock. I think he just heard about it. And I think he said, you know, that film you're doing, I always remember he said, it's got a great word of, and I remember what he said. He said Tom Cruise had a screening of it in Hollywood, right? I can remember in Wardour bumping into this guy. I said, oh, that's good. And then when the film came out, it had a fantastic review in M magazine in which they actually mentioned my name, which was peculiar. It said blah blah blah, and an extremely unlucky traffic warden, Robert Brydon. And I thought, well, I must be able to use this to my advantage. So I wrote a script for characters I invented, and I had it edited in a studio, whereas now you could do it up top. In those days, you had to rent an edit suite and a dub. I put it onto VHS, had a cover VHS, called it Robert or Rob Brydon, I can't remember, an extremely unlucky traffic warden, and I sent them out. And that was the tape that sort of changed my career, because there was a character on there called Keith Barrett, and that Marion and Jeff, which was the thing that sort of broke me.
Yeah, and that series, I just discovered it recently, because I don't know if it was released in Portugal, but I checked some episodes on YouTube, and that experience was very challenging for you, no? Because the character moves from little pieces of comedy for some serious, dramatic moments, and it's quite good until even now, almost 20 years later.
Yeah, well, I loved doing this. You know, it's very the thing was, because I didn't have anything else at that point. I'm looking. I was voices, commercials, and I was doing quite well with that. You know, so I had a comfortable life, but I couldn't get auditions and stuff. So suddenly I had this opportunity to play this part, this guy that I had created. So it was very freeing, and it was just me and Hugo Blick, who co-wrote and directed it, just us in the car. And there's something about being in a car that helps you with the acting. So number one, when you're driving, and it's the same in The Trip, although Steve does the driving, but anytime you're driving in a scene, it switches off a part of your brain, and it stops you being self-conscious. So it helps. And also, when you're delivering lines, so when I'd be parked in Marion and Jeff, knowing that where the windscreen is, and knowing exactly where the camera is all the time, it gives you a great sense of your boundaries and your security in delivering lines and devices and things. It's because you know how much of your face can be seen depending on where you turn it. Camera was always in the same place.
Yeah.
So, and going from comedy to drama within it was always something that I loved. You know, one of my favorite shows around that time was the Larry Sanders Show, and that for me is the perfect example of comedy and drama, because I think that show works equally well as a drama or as a comedy, and they just overlaps beautifully.
Yeah, and there's one of my current I watch it from 5 to 5 years or something like that. Blackadder. I watch it from 5 to 5 years, and the last time I saw it was with my girlfriend last year, and that last episode of the fourth season, it's just like, I mean, all those apparently goofy characters suddenly have a moral, dramatic tension in them, and
that's. Oh, I tell you what, I'm just looking at this. I've got to do a Zoom with Steve now at 2:15.
Okay, we finish now.
Yeah, sorry, but I really enjoyed talking to you. It's been very nice.
Thank you very much, and stay safe and have a nice week.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.